What is up, everyone? We got another UFC card to break down from a DraftKings DFS perspective. First things first, slate context. Very important this week. Number one, we got two 5-round fights, both of which are very tough fades. We'll get to those a bit later. And then the second thing that I think is important is that we have 14 fights. And that's on the higher end for a UFC card. The highest you'll usually see is around 15 fights. So 14 fight card, it's a lot of fights. So we're going to need to target upside. We always target upside, but especially on a week like this, it's going to be even more important to get those outlier scores. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. First fight of the night, we got Joanne Wood versus Marina Moroz. So we have Marina Moroz at 9K flat and Joanne Wood at 7.2K. So the pricing is pretty efficient as far as the odds go. And for Moroz at 9K with a touch of grappling upside that she has, I'm going to want like a minus 110 ITD. And you'll see it's just not there. So she seems like a fade to me. And then Joanne Wood, just non existent ITD line. But I'll tell you what, I looked into her game log and I looked into her fight style, her stats. She throws out a lot of volume. You can see in her wins 131 strikes, 123 in a loss, 148. And, that's a lot of volume, especially for a 3-round fight. And at only 7.2K, like 105, 108 in decision wins, 96. That's pretty good stuff. So I think that Joanne Wood, I think she's actually a good play. We're not arguing whether she wins this fight or not, but she's priced efficiently, and if she wins the fight at 7.2K and puts up 90 to 100 points, that's really good. So I think she's a good play, and the first underdog that I'm going to look to target. And then, like I said, on the Moroz side, it's just I don't see anything sticking out there that makes me want to play her. Next up, we got CJ Vergara versus Asu Almabayev. Asu's a big favorite here. He's a grappler, and the odds I guess might be a bit wide, but they make sense to me. He has a very good path to victory in this fight. But he's also very expensive. I think, 9.5K. So at 9.5K, I'm gonna want. He has the grappling upside, so that's already taken care of. And then I'm also gonna want maybe minus 130 to minus 150 ITD to feel good about playing him. And he's plus, I mean, not plus, he's minus, 120 ish without the VIG. I think that's in play. He scored a 105 in his last fight. I mean, that's what you're probably going to need out of a 9.5K fighter on a 14 fight card, and that still might not be enough. So I'm debating for a pure MME perspective. I'm leaning towards putting him in fine, but he's obviously a great play, for example, in a cash game, in single entry, 3 max. A lot of these low risk contests, he's a really good play just because he, can probably score 90 to 110 in all of his wins, which is a good score. We'll put him in fine for now just because it's hard to see him really get there on a 14 fight card like this. Um, and if he doesn't finish, we don't really know what it looks like if he has a 3-round decision dominant, grappling win. Could that be a 120? I mean, I don't know. So I think he's fine, but I might move him to a good play depending on the rest of the context of the slate. And then we got CJ Vergara, just not great ITD line. He's just not winning often enough. So, I think he's a fade. I think he's a fade. Okay, then we got a key fight here. Josh Parisian versus Rebellis. And, this Rebellis guy apparently has finished all of his fights inside of 1 minute. He's 6'7". He's a Taekwondo Olympic medalist. He's, gotten a ton of hype. I haven't seen a single person even pick Parisian or even, mention how he might win. So very interesting fight. Let's just go back to the numbers. I imagine Rebellis is going to be a good play. Under 1.5 is heavily juiced, and he's about a 3-1 favorite. At 9.3K, I imagine his ITD line is going to be, it's very strong. So that's elite stuff. The one thing I do want to see is, his round 1 prop. If he's like pick him in round 1, like minus 110, I think he's an elite play. But let's take a look. Minus 250. That is insane stuff. I haven't seen a fighter with that good of a round 1 line maybe ever. Well, actually, maybe like Bo Nickel. But yeah, wow. At 9.3K, that's very, very tough to not play. So he's an elite play. Because of that, we have to take a look at Josh Parisian at 6.9K. And, around 7K, I'm looking for like plus 350 ITD. And he's plus 330. So on its own, that's actually pretty good, despite what you hear and despite all the opinions I have on this fight, which is that Josh Parisian's going to get knocked out and score 2 points. All of that aside, the metrics just are what they are. And if these are just numbers on the screen and I see a 6.9K fighter with these metrics, it's a good play. It just is. So reluctantly, I have to put him. I can't be biased. I got to put him in. But I will say, I would not touch him in 20 max. I would not. I would only even consider playing him if you're playing 150. But considering that he's going up against one of the most elite plays on the slate, and he's like an okay or good play himself, he just has to be considered. So I think both sides of this fight are good, but don't touch Parisian in any low risk contest. He's going to score 2 points, just so you know. Then we got Olekjsiejczuk versus Michel Pereira. So 55-45 type of fight. The prices are pretty efficient, yeah. I think this fight should be a good target. You got two guys who, Olekjsiejczuk is going to come forward. He's pretty durable. He has a good gas tank. And I could see him wearing on Pereira in the later rounds and maybe even finding the finish. And then Pereira, he's, a wild guy. He has some KO upside. He has a couple takedowns in his back pocket, but it's not his go-to. So I think as long as the ITD lines make sense, I want to play both sides of this fight. Plus 150 for Pereira, yeah. And plus 275 for Olekjsiejczuk. I think both sides of this fight are good to target. I'm not going to spell his name right, but you guys know what I mean. Pereira, okay. Next up, we got Felipe Lins versus Cutelaba. This is another fight that I think is going to be a very good fantasy point fight to target. You got Cutelaba, who comes forward, looks for a finish, goes for takedowns, kind of has everything you're looking for in an MME play. The reason why I say MME is because he loses a lot by finish as well. He's kind of a feast or famine fighter. But for our purposes in DFS, that's a good play. And yeah, it's about a pick'em fight with the under 1.5 slightly juiced. So I think both sides of this fight are good to target. I do prefer the Cutelaba side just because he is going to be the aggressor. He is historically the more fantasy friendly fighter. And I do think he gets it done. I don't rate Lynn's ability that well. Cutelaba, although he's lost a lot, he's fought really good guys. So, yeah, I prefer the Cutelaba side a tiny bit more, but nonetheless, both sides are very strong to target. Pedro Munhoz versus Kyler Phillips. Okay. I don't think I'm gonna get to Kyler. He's Munhoz is as durable as they come, and Kyler Phillips is a favorite, so I imagine he's gonna be 9.1K. I mean, you're gonna need minus 110 at least, and I don't think he'll be anywhere near that. Plus like 320. Yeah, so no thanks on that. And it's not like he doesn't have significant decision upside. 77, 99, 73. I just don't see the upside here to play Phillips. And then Munhoz on the other side, not a great ITD line, but what I will say is he's going to be great for a cash game. He has a very good floor in this matchup. I think he's a great for single entry, 3-max, those types of contests. I think Munhoz is actually a very good underdog. I think this fight is pretty close. I think it'll go all 3 rounds. And I do think Munhoz is live here. So I'm going to put him as a fine play. He just doesn't have the upside that we're looking for historically. Like 72, 68. That's not great, but he is only 7.1K. And I think he's fine. I do like him as a fighter in my underdog pool this week. And yeah, like I said, Kyler Phillips, I think it's a fade. Then we got RDA versus Mateus Gamrot. So you got RDA, 39 years old, coming back down a weight class. He's a legend. He's a very good fighter. But I just think this is Gamrot's fight to lose. I think he's going to come forward, shoot a million takedowns, get some of them, and win a decision. But with that being said, let's take a look at his price. He's 9.4K. He has takedown upside, but he hasn't historically, scored a ton. 89, or excuse me, 86, 84, 5-rounder, 107. But, an 85 is not going to be good enough at 9.4K on a card like this. So I guess the question is, does he have an outcome where RDA is getting taken down? Because he will get taken down, but he also will work to get up. So is there a world where Gamrot is taking him down, RDA is getting back up, and Gamrot can rack up 7 to 10 takedowns? I think that's in play. So I'm going to put it as a very fringy MME play, but I wouldn't prioritize Gamrot in anything 20 or below. And I think RDA, he's just not winning often enough. His ITD line's non-existent, and Gamrot's ITD line is not good at all either. So for that reason, I think it's Gamrot and MME just for that, 10 takedown win that's could be in his range of outcomes. But besides that, I think this fight is pretty much a pass. Okay, then we got Caitlin Chookagian versus Macy Barber. 2-1 favorite on Barber. So 8.8K, that's about fine. Yeah, so pretty efficiently priced. You got a fight that's heavily juiced to go all 3 rounds, and I just can't see this fight scoring well. Macy Barber, that's a finish. 69, 63, 70. I just don't see it. So, and then Chookagian on the other side, non-existent. Both of them have bad ITD lines, but Chookagian's is non-existent. Does she score well enough in her decision wins is the question. 57, 72. I mean, I guess she's cheaper, so when she does win, obviously she'll have, she'll be higher point per dollar, but I just don't see it for this fight. I think it's a fade. Okay. Then we got Yadonson versus Petr Yan. Very high-level fight. Should be a great fight as a fan, but from DFS, I don't know if it'll deliver. It's heavily expected to go all three, and I imagine, both fighters, really horrible ITD metrics for their prices, which is 8.3K and 7.9K. And there's not much grappling upside to be had in this fight. So, it should be a great fight, but as far as fantasy points go, I think it's a fade. Okay, then we got another what I would call a key fight. You got Blaydes versus Almeida. First things first, we'll put Almeida as a good play because we know what he's trying to do. He's trying to come forward, shoot takedowns, and then once he's there, he's either going to, look for a ground and pound finish or a submission. And even if that doesn't happen, we've seen in his last fight, he can still absolutely smash in a decision win. So I think Almeida's win conditions for this fight, it just makes him a really good fantasy play. The side I want to talk about is Curtis Blaydes. So he's 8.2K, so maybe plus 200 ITD would be good. And he's right there. But what I will say is Curtis Blaydes, his game plan for this fight should be to stuff the takedowns and then, knock Almeida out on the feet. But what you could see happen is he does stuff the takedowns, but he just, outstrikes Almeida on the feet, doesn't find a finish. And, if that's happening over 3 rounds, you could see like a 50 strike decision win that scores like 50 points. So I do think that Blaydes has more pass to bust than Almeida, but you still have to play it just for the fact that if he does stuff the takedowns, he is live for a knockout. I think that the odds are telling you that. So I think Blaydes he's still a good play, but just be cautious that there is a greater risk that he busts in this fight. Okay, then we got JDM versus Gilbert Burns. Great fight. Gilbert Burns, he's 37 years old, coming off shoulder surgery, but he's fought the elite of the elite, and we know he's a proven fighter. JDM is on the come up. He's pretty much a pure striker, but he's very good at what he does. He rips the body, go up top, and he's a very good boxer. So I think Gilbert is automatically a good play because I imagine his win condition is going to revolve around takedowns. I just how does Gilbert beat JDM in a striking match? I don't see it. So, and the fact that he probably, if he does get the takedowns, he probably has submission upside as well. Like, let's see. His most likely way to win is by submission. So I think that Burns is actually a good play. And then JDM, his, upside is way more reliant on a finish, whereas Gilbert could still score well in a decision. JDM, we really need like, plus 160 ITD. He's like right there. Okay, yeah, he's like right there. So I think JDM is also a good play. And I do actually want to give my opinion. I do think that JDM is going to knock out Burns in round 2. I think the age is a factor. I think JDM, yes, he did get taken down and controlled by Hafez, but I think that came at the perfect time. I imagine he's been working on his takedown defense a ton since that fight, and I just think he's going to march Gilbert down, start ripping the body, come up top, and potentially knock him out against the cage. That's just what I think. So because of that, will it affect my DFS play? Maybe, but my blanket answer to everyone is just to get to both sides of this fight. They're both really good for DFS. Then we got Michael Page versus Kevin Holland. This should be a fun fight, but I don't know if it will deliver as far as fantasy points go. So you have Kevin Holland 8.5K and Michael Page 7.7K. What's going on here? Okay. Yeah, so prices are pretty good. Michael Page, I'm looking for like plus 250 or something like that. And he's just plus 450, so not even close. And then Kevin Holland, I would like to see maybe plus 170. He's like plus 200. I guess Holland is fringy. But this fight, I mean, I think you're really relying on Holland's finishing ability to get to his ceiling. Like if this fight goes all 3 rounds, which it's favored to do so, I think this fight busts. Like, what do they have Holland at strikes? 64. Let's be generous and give him 75. I mean, yeah, 60 points. That's not going to cut it. So I think he's definitely an MME play because if he doesn't get a finish, he's not going to score well, I don't think. Okay. And then Page, I think it's just a fade. So, yeah, Holland is a fringe play. Page is a fade. And let's move on to the co-main. Poirier versus Saint Denis. Very good fight. Very fun fight. And, I'm not even going to look at the metrics. This fight is a fantasy point festival. It's a fantasy point breeding ground, like whatever you want to call it. This is where fantasy points, are born, is in this fight. It just, I don't see how this fight busts. Okay, you got 5 rounds to work with. You got both guys who also have finishing upside. You got Saint Denis with the takedown upside. It's just chaos, and I think it's an elite fight to target on both sides. Now, I will say, I do think Saint Denis is going to win, which, I mean, doesn't help because, I mean, he's minus 200, so, like, yeah, of course. But I do think I have more interest in his side just because I think Poirier, he's one of my favorite fighters of all time, but he's 35, coming off a head kick loss. He's always struggled with guys who can implement the grappling, and Saint Denis, he's not a world-class grappler, but he can get you up against the cage, insert a hook, and just start pounding away, take you down with double. Like, he has the grappling upside in this matchup, so it's a tough fight for Poirier, but once again, my blanket advice is get to both sides of this fight. It's a very strong fight to target. Okay, then we got the main event, Marlon Vera, Sean O'Malley. 5 rounds to work with. Both guys are pretty much pure strikers. And Marlon Vera, 5 rounds against Corey Sandhagen, gave up 128 strikes in a fight where Corey was doing a lot of wrestling. Gave up 271 to Rob Font over 5 rounds. And gave up 113 to Munhoz in just a 3-round fight. He absorbs a lot of strikes, and Sean O'Malley lands a lot of strikes. So I think that O'Malley, I would honestly put him at 150 strikes over 5 rounds as like a median projection. That's 90 points. And then I even think he has like 200 plus strike upside. So I think that Sean O'Malley is anywhere from 90 points to even like 130 in a win here. And so I'm not very confident on where he lands in that range, but because I think he has 130 in his range of outcomes, I think he also has like, 100 and 100 plus a lot of the other time. I think that makes him a really strong play. Um, and then Marlon Vera, I don't like his decision equity. I just can't. I think it'll be a close fight relatively, and I just don't see them giving Marlon Vera a close fight over Sean O'Malley. I mean, he could, but I'd just be shocked if that happened. So I think his win condition really relies on a finish and probably, a later finish, round 4 or round 5. And, if he does it, that'll score well. So, and, I think O'Malley will probably be pretty high owned. So I think, both of these 5 rounders are just really tough to fade. They both have many paths to get there. When if O'Malley is scoring a 130, you're just gonna need it. So yeah, I don't really have a strong take on who wins, but I am confident that this fight can deliver from a DFS perspective. I mean, obviously, like I said, I think O'Malley's like lower end in his wins is like 90 points, which won't be good enough if that's the case. But because he has those monster scores in his range of outcomes, you just have to do it. So let's go through it all again, just to be sure. Um, a lot of fades, so I might have to go back and add a few fighters in, because the player pool is looking pretty hollow right now. So I think Joanne Wood is the side in the first fight. Yep, she's a good play. Asu is fine, but in lower risk stuff, I think he's a really good play. I think both sides of this fight are really good, especially the Rebellis side, and don't touch Parisian in anything that's 20 enters or below. Pereira Olekjsiejczuk fight is a really good fight on both sides. Same with the Linz Cutelaba fight. I think it's Munhoz or pass on the Phillips fight. I think Gamrot is a good MME play because he could have that ceiling outcome. I think this Barber fight is a fade. I think the Jan fight is a fade. I think both sides of the Almeida Blaydes fight are good, but Almeida is the better, more reliable DFS play if he does win. I think both sides of the JDM fight are good, but I do personally think that JDM is going to find a knockout. I think it's Holland or pass in the Page fight. And then both 5-rounders are very good, but I am on Saint Denis to win. But I don't know if that'll affect my DFS play that much, if any. Okay, so that'll be it. Hopefully that helped a bit. If you have any questions, please leave a comment or leave a message in the Discord. I'm in DFS PhD's Discord, an awesome Discord. Shout out to everyone in there. Shout out to DFS PhD. But yeah, hopefully everyone has a good week this week, and let's make some money. I'll see you guys in the next one.